Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to Lesson 7 of Straight Path Academy Arabic, Volume 1, Reading Arabic Letters. In this lesson, we're going to learn another symbol that's written above an Arabic letter. This symbol is called the shadda, and as you can see, it looks like a little W, similar to the letter Sin. And one example we can compare this shape to is the outline of somebody flexing their biceps. You can see there's that W shape that's made. And the reason this is a useful example is because the shadda indicates a double letter, meaning that it gives the letter that is written above some extra strength regarding how you pronounce it. So to give you an example, an Arabic word that contains a shadda is the name Muhammad. So let's take a look at the word Muhammad. Where do we see a double letter in the name Muhammad? Well, that would be right here. We see two M's. And because there are two M's, you're going to pronounce that M with a bit more strength. You're going to stress that M sound, Muhammad. Now in the English language, they would just write the same letter twice. However, in Arabic, instead of writing the same letter twice, you're going to write it just once, but you're going to add a shadda above it. So for example, you'd remove one of the M's and instead write a shadda above just one. So just like a dhamma above a letter represents a U sound, or a fatha above a letter represents an A sound, a shadda above a letter means that it is a double letter. So the shadda written above a letter indicates a double letter. Okay, but if the shadda indicates two letters, then what about the harakas for those two letters? Well, the first letter has a sukun, meaning that it has no haraka. But the second letter has whatever haraka is written. So for example, let's take a look at this. The first letter is the letter ta, which is represented by T. Its haraka is the kesra, which is represented by I. The next letter is the letter ba, represented by B. However, when we look at the haraka, we see both a shadda and a fatha. But first we're going to look at the shadda. The shadda indicates what? A double letter. So that means there's not just one ba, but rather there's two bas. As we said, the first letter is always going to have a sukun, and the second letter is going to have whatever haraka is written. So for example, if we look at this, we see that there are two bas written. The first ba has a sukun, meaning there's no haraka. So we would write just a B without a vowel sound coming after it. But the second letter is going to take whatever haraka is written. So we're going to write another B for the second ba. And because there is a line written above the shadda, that indicates a fatha. That's why here we wrote a fatha above the second ba. Therefore, after the second B, we would write the letter A to represent the fatha. So if we were going to read this after writing out the sound of each letter and symbol, it would be pronounced tibba, emphasizing that double B sound, because that's what the shadda represents. So keep in mind, words are not going to be written like this. They're not going to be written with a double letter, one having a sukun and the other taking a haraka, but rather it's going to be written with a shadda, representing that there's a double letter, the first of which takes a sukun. Now before moving on to the exercise, there's one more important thing to point out, which is if a haraka appears below the shadda, that means that it is a kesra, even if it's written above the actual letter itself. For example, here, based on what we previously learned, one might assume that this haraka is a fatha. Why? Because it's written above the letter ba. And we learned that a line written above a letter is a fatha. However, this is not the case if that line is written beneath a shadda. So even though this line is written above a letter, it's written underneath a shadda. And anytime you see this line written underneath a shadda, that means this is actually a kesra. The fatha is going to be written above the shadda, like we see here. So a line written above a shadda is a fatha. A line written beneath a shadda is a kesra. And then we also give you examples with tanween. So this would be tanween kesra, and this would be tanween fatha, when they are combined with a shadda. So now let's go to the exercise and try number 6 together. Step number 1, as always, we identify the letter. That W shape is the letter Sin. So we write an S for the sin. A loop above a letter is the dhamma. We're going to write a U for the dhamma. So the first letter in harakah sound like su, su. Then we, once again, begin by identifying the letter. That wave shape with a dot underneath is the letter jim. So we're going to write a J for the letter jim. So then next we look for the harakah. And what do we find? We find a shadda. What does the shadda indicate? It indicates a double letter. So because it's written above the letter jim, that means that there are two jims. The first jim has what? The first jim has a sukun, meaning there's no vowel sound coming after the first jim. And a jim with a sukun is written as just a J. But we need to write another J for that second jim. And what does the second letter take when there's a shadda? Well, it's going to take whichever harakah is written. And which harakah do we see written? We see a line written above the shadda, meaning that this is a fatha. So we're going to write an A for the fatha. So when we read this combination of letters and symbols, it would be pronounced as sujja, sujja. Emphasizing which letter? Emphasizing that jim, emphasizing that J sound, because that is what the shadda represents. So let's try one more together. First, we identify the letter. A wave shape with a dot underneath is the letter jim. So we write J for the letter jim. Next, we identify the harakah. A line beneath is a kesra, so we're going to write an I for the kesra. Then we identify the next letter. This shape with three dots above is the letter tha. So we write TH for the letter tha. Then we look to the harakah and we find a shadda. That shadda indicates a double letter. The first having a sukun, and the sukun means there's no vowel sound coming after it. So this TH is going to represent the first tha, and then we're going to write another TH for the second tha. And as we learned, when it comes to the shadda, it's a double letter. The first has a sukun, but the second is going to take whichever harakah is written. Now we need to be careful here, because although this is a line written above the letter, it's written beneath what? It's written beneath the shadda. And what did we learn about a line that's written beneath the shadda? We learned that it is actually a kesra. So because this is a kesra, we're going to write an I for the kesra. And then we'll move on to the next letter. A U shape with a dot underneath is the letter ba. So we'll write a B for the ba. And next we identify the harakah. And here we find two fathas, which is tanween. So we write an A for the first fatha. And what do we write for the second fatha? We write the letter N. So now if we read this entire combination of letters and symbols, we would say Ji, Thi, Ban, Jithiban, Jithiban. Emphasizing what? Emphasizing the letter tha, that th sound. That does it for this lesson. Keep up the great work and make sure that you complete the exercises. The more that you practice, the easier and easier and easier all of this is going to become, inshallah. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.